Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Red Handed Denial, A Journey Through Virtual Dystopia, out May 24th on Paid Vacation Records. The album has 10 tracks, 35 minutes in length, and this is the band's fourth full-length studio album. They are a Canadian metalcore band. Now you may look at this record and see 10 songs, 35 minutes and think that's not a lot. Well, I actually think it's a little bit too much. The reason for it is that this album offers two instrumental tracks, two interludes, very synth-driven tracks that don't really connect the experience, or don't connect to the experience, I should say, of the album itself. Not that the album doesn't have electronic elements, but the album doesn't really feel like it needs these two songs in order to work, in order for the other tracks to better coexist with one another. They don't match the overall vibe of the record, they don't match the vibe of the individual songs, and they don't really offer a bridge between where you were and where you're going when you look at them in the context of the record. So if you take these two songs out, sure, now you have 8 tracks and you have around 30 minutes. That might not be as appealing as 10 songs in 35 minutes, but it sure would make this record a lot more fluid, a lot more dynamic, and a lot more engaging. It would be a more cohesive experience, and I think a better experience all around. Once you make it past that point and you start to listen to the album and you start to digest all the elements of the sound and you start to dive deeper and deeper into this record, you're going to find an album that has a really good sound. From a production standpoint, the album is well put together. It has clarity, but it also has a lot of texture. It has a lot of heaviness, and it allows you to see the elements collaborating with one another extremely well. It also allows you to see different influences coming in and not allowing the album to just be pure metalcore, or at least traditional metalcore. This record definitely goes a little bit beyond that, and you see it across not just the influences but the result of those same influences. This is an album that brings some prog elements to the table, it brings some classic heavy metal elements to the table, and it also brings some post-hardcore elements. So when you start to bring these elements and mixing them in with their more traditional metalcore sound, the more traditional DNA sound of the band, if you will, you start to create songs that have a lot more life, they have a lot more energy, they move a lot better, more texture, and offer a more rich experience because they have just more to give to the listener. It's not just what you see at the surface. You're able to dive deeper and peel those layers and see exactly what makes these songs tick, the dynamics within these songs, and all the brightness that comes along with it, and sometimes even darkness, because this album plays really well off of that more introspective, melancholic experience with a more extroverted, intense, aggressive output. So those two are worlds that are combining, or maybe colliding in some cases, throughout the record, and with that great production and all of the infusion of these elements, you see a little bit better what the picture is all about. They're able to paint a much better picture, a more vivid picture, song in and song out. And you don't have to go too far to see those influences taking hold and dictating exactly where you're going to go. First off, you're going to notice it in the guitars. The guitar sound on this album is excellent. It's very rich, it's alive, it has energy, it brings in a more melodic, melancholic sound, but it also brings in a more heavy, sometimes more distorted sound with some almost industrial elements that work really well in order to create heaviness, in order to create volume. But it doesn't stay there, because then when you look at the guitar solos that the album offers, they have a lot more clarity and they have a lot more to give. The guitar solos on this album are not pure add-ons. They're not there to compensate for maybe a lack of a breakdown on a track or two. They're there because they needed to be there. They become part of the song. Their texture within the song, they add a different aroma, and those solos are not short-lived either. They have this more classic heavy metal experience to them, bringing in some prog elements, giving them a little bit different kind of energy, different kind of movement, but always enhancing what the tracks are all about, always enhancing the atmosphere of the song, always enhancing the pure essence of the songs themselves. So I really enjoyed this album on a guitar standpoint, from the ability to be diverse but still be connected at the exact same time, not just about heavy breakdowns but also about great guitar solos, exposing the full range of their capabilities guitar wise, and once again becoming a more richer sound all around. And you see that as well in the drums, because the drum sound had a great full sound to them. The drums on this album are super heavy. They're not super powerful. It's not that style of album, and it's not that style of music. They need to be there to fill in the blanks and make everything behind those guitars feel bigger, feel complete. And that's exactly what the drums do, song in and song out. So it was a great experience drum-wise, because it made the overall soundscape of this record feel a little bit bigger, feel like it had more life in it. It had a pep in its step. It didn't fall flat. And when you have guitars that at times move a little bit in more narrow spaces, having that bigger or having that more full drum sound really helps elevate the guitars, and it gives you overall sound experience a much bigger platform, a much larger width. And that is important for a record like this, when you try to create ebbs and flows within songs, when you try to create ebbs and flows from track to track. Now, once it comes into the vocals, Lauren's vocals were amazing on this album. She was able to really navigate what felt to me a very emotional experience. This album feels very emotional driven, and you notice that not only in some of the lyrical content, but you notice that in how she approaches the tracks and how she approaches those same lyrics. Her vocal range is on full display, from the super nice, almost soothing, clean vocals that she's able to deliver, especially on a song like I Hope You're Happy. I mean, that is a track that has some sorrow in it. It's really a deep felt song. So the vocal performance on that track to me is on one spectrum of what she can deliver, and then the performance, for example, on Smokescreen is on the opposite side of the spectrum, where it comes in a lot heavier, a lot thicker, a lot more aggressive, with a lot more intensity. So this is an album that allowed her to really be free and where she wanted to go with her voice. But the important aspect is her voice always felt and sounded very natural and very connected to the album, that emotional experience really coming through and giving extra quality to the songs and to the record itself, which allows this to be a solid record. I honestly feel like outside of those two instrumental synth driven songs, and once again, it's not like the album doesn't have synths. This album uses the synths quite a bit in order to fill in the gaps that exist between bass, drums, and guitars, to wrap up the package in a more nice and tight way. The synths are there for that, and you're going to find them throughout the entire record. But to have two songs that just go heavy on the synths and don't allow you to feel a connection with the previous track or the track that comes after really makes you wonder what they're there for. So outside of those two songs, and outside of the speed bumps that they cause when you're going from first to last, this is a solid record all around, one that I really enjoyed musically and vocally. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Falling Back to You. I love the more melodic, mellow feel in the verses, with the heavier sound and the bigger intensity coming through in the chorus. The backing vocals in the chorus help the chorus jump out and be a little bit bigger, adds volume, adds size, adds texture. And then you have that more melodic side of the song in the verses, allowing the bass to creep in and play a more defining role. There's also a little bit of a transition in this song as you're moving from the more melodic side to the heavier side on the guitars and vocals, and that transitions are done extremely well. It's a smooth ride in terms of going from peaks to valleys. It's not a linear ride, it's a smooth ride when it goes from peaks to valleys. A very dynamic song. It has an amazing guitar solo, and I think the guitar solo being so crisp, so clean, so warm, so classic in its touch, definitely adds a different level of quality to how the whole track is put together. And then pushing the vocals through the end of the solo, that's almost a classic heavy metal feel that you don't see necessarily a lot of more modern bands doing it. They did it extremely well on this track and allowed the song to really stand out. Next, we have Smokescreen. I mentioned this song, and one of the reasons I gravitated to this track was because of the heavy consistency that the track has, both musically and vocally. It's definitely a song that carries a little bit of extra weight, that has a little bit of extra aggression. You see the synth sound permeating through the guitars. It's a nice element because it doesn't add to the heaviness of the song, but it definitely adds to the volume of the song, almost infusing a slight industrial feel when you have guitars this heavy, and when you have the vocals also coming across at times with a little bit of an industrial touch. Having those synths there really do that. It doesn't dilute the heaviness, it just compounds it and it makes the song a lot bigger. So being a track that has this sort of consistency, both musically and vocally, and then with some heavy breakdowns, all of that put together does allow the track to jump out as one of those really heavy songs. And this song is squeezed in between those two less heavier instrumental tracks, so that also allows it to really stand out and have that sort of predominant effect in the overall listening experience. Last but not least, I hope you're happy I mentioned this song. This is definitely the ballad of the record. It's such an emotional song. So there's so much sourness to the way this track is coming across. There's almost a sense of hopelessness, but at the same time, there's hope. There's hope in hopelessness. It's a really contradicting track in terms of the emotions that you feel when you listen to it, and the emotions that you get coming through the lyrics and the vocals and the sound. And that's only possible because of the acoustic side of the track. Really allows the vocals to come into the forefront and be the main protagonist of the story, not just telling the story, but of the story itself. Then the track builds up as most ballads do, and then it closes off not heavy, but with more volume, with the drums and guitars becoming a little bit more defined, with a little bit of a bigger sound, and the vocals also feeling a little bit more free, released from the chains of the first 2/3. The last third really allows you to see this track breaking a little bit through and finally find perhaps the happiness and freedom that the protagonist was looking for and wasn't necessarily able to see it in those first 2/3. So a really interesting song because of all of those emotional dynamics that it has. This is it, Red Handed Denial with a journey through virtual dystopia, out May 24th on Paid Vacation Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.